Principal Matters Podcast, episode 162. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker. Before we jump into today's episode, I just wanted to give you a couple of alerts. First of all, for those of you that have been interested in the mastermind community that I've been talking about in previous episodes, you can now find the application for that live at my website at williamdparker.com/mastermind. And if you're not familiar with that, this is an elite leadership community that meets once a week for focused conversations, hot seat discussions, and ways that individuals can level up with one another in mutual accountability for stronger growth in leadership. It's an exclusive, paid-for mastermind group, and you can check it out at my website at williamdparker.com/mastermind. Also, this week, Danny Bauer and I are going to be talking about another opportunity he's created called Go Community. And I've created a link on my website for that as well at williamdparker.com/Go Community. Check it out, where you can be a part of an online community, a closed social group where you can be discussing leadership in confidentiality with like-minded leaders. Finally, I just want to celebrate that this week we have reached over 300,000 unique listens for the Principal Matters podcast. So thanks so much for being a part of a growing community. Thanks for doing what matters. And I hope you enjoyed this week's episode with my special guest, Danny Bauer. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. You can check out all my resources for school leaders at my website at williamdparker.com. Today, we'll be discussing Go Community, how you can harness the power of the room with my guest, Danny Bauer, who also serves as the host of the amazing school leader podcast, Better Leaders, Better Schools. A former Chicago and Houston school administrator, Danny Bauer has dedicated the past 5 years to building resources, interviewing leaders, and facilitating masterminds for school leaders. He is also the author of the book, The Better Leaders, Better Schools Roadmap, Small Ideas That Lead to Big Impact. Danny was a guest of Principal Matters in episode 71, just 2 years ago, and it is an honor to have him back. It's great to see you.
Well, it's such an honor to be here on your show almost 100 episodes later. It's amazing how you and I have both grown, over the years, and thank you so much for having me as a guest.
Well, I feel like we have been friends for so long, Danny, and I know we've been like in the same place physically maybe once together, but we have been connecting online for so many years, and I followed your work, and I have benefited from your resources, and I consider you a dear friend. And so catch us up for those listeners who may have been introduced to you in episode 71. It's been a while. And for those who may know who you are, I think it would be great just to tell us what's been going on for the last couple of years before we start talking about Go Communities. What's been going on with Danny Bauer?
Man, that's so much. I live overseas now. So my wife's a research scientist, and she wanted to explore, doing her work in an international space, and asked me if I'd be down with that. And at the time, I was still serving as a local school leader in Houston. I was also coaching school leaders in the mastermind, but not trying to grow it. Being a school leader is a tough job. I had a full plate, right? So that I would consider that almost as just like a hobby that I really enjoyed. It gave me some extra energy, and it was good for my soul too, because we're talking about education and leadership at a deep level. I asked for a 1-year runway to try to be a success if I would pursue supporting school leaders in a full-time manner, and then really focus on putting out a great podcast. My wife said, cool, let's do it. And we did it. So we lived in Belgium, we lived in Netherlands. Now we're currently in Scotland. And the cool thing is, once you get over here, travel is really cheap, and the countries are so close together. We've seen it all, and have been able to do that on a budget. So it's not like we're millionaires, right? But we've seen a lot of interesting cultures, and that has changed my thinking in so many different ways, right? Because of that exposure. So personally, that's where I've been. Professionally, now I support school leaders full time. That's what I do. So all my creative energy goes towards the podcast or creating content like the book, setting up. I figured out that one of my superpowers is being a community builder. So we have the Mastermind Go community, the tribe of listeners from the podcast, and that's what I do.
And you have been able to connect and help grow leaders here in the U.S., across the world. In fact, talk a little bit about your masterminds. I've been talking to my listeners about some mastermind offerings I'm going to be offering in 19 and 20, but you've been doing this now
Yeah.
for several years, Danny, and talk about the power of those communities and what leaders learn when they can participate in masterminding.
First, I want the listeners to understand that they're worth it. And it's really important to plug into a community. So, of course, selfishly, like I want to work with you, I want to support you. But I think it's awesome, Will, that you're jumping into this space and supporting school leaders in that way. Even if I could serve more leaders, and I can't serve them all, and neither can you. So I see this as a win-win and not a competition at all. So I would really highly encourage, listeners, whoever you resonate with, the times that work out for you, you're going to get a world-class experience in a community like a mastermind. It's set up to be a space where school leaders can be authentic, vulnerable, and brave, right? And here's the thing, is novice or veteran principals, you don't necessarily have a space or want to tell your supervisor where you're struggling, right? Or to be just completely raw and honest, because they evaluate you and who knows what that relationship is like. I hope you have a nice one. That's not always the case. And so if it's even a little bit rocky, like where do you go when you need support? Here's where you go, right? So the mastermind's there to connect, right? When I think about what we do at Better Leaders, the why is everybody wins when a leader gets better, right? Everyone wins when Will gets better or the listener gets better. And so for me, we do that through human connection, community building. That's the mastermind. And now we have the Go community. So it's all about plugging in, leveling up through other people.
Danny, that reminds me, just the other night, I was talking to a graduate level class here in the Tulsa area. Some folks that are working on their doctoral degrees in education. And I brought up some research that I assume that every school leader knows. And I was actually surprised that I was in a room full of very talented individuals who were not familiar with the Wallace Foundation research that came out several years ago that I know you and I both quote on our shows, which, the two most important factors for student improvement in a school are number one, the quality teacher that student has. And number two, who is it?
The building leader.
The building leader, that's the principal. And I was shocked but also just aware of how many people still need to know that. Principals who are listening to this show right now, next to the quality teacher that student has in school this year, you are the second most important factor of whether that student will see growth and success. And so if we're not investing in ourselves, if principals aren't investing in their own growth, they're not investing in their students. And I'm not saying that as a guilt trip. That's just reality. Our own growth benefits our kids. And so,
right.
I'm so excited about the work that you've been doing, Danny. And that's the reason we started podcasting, both of us, because we wanted to be able to reflect on our own growth, connect with other leaders, learn from one another, learn from them, and then share out those lessons. And so I have 162 episodes, and you've got way more than that. I mean, you've had 500,000 people download yours, and I've had almost 300,000 download mine. So
nice.
Collective. Think about collectively how many millions of students are being affected by all the conversations that we're having together. And so I always get jazzed when I talk to you, Danny. So I just am so excited about the fact that we can harness together all of this. And this is why today's episode is called Go Community, How to Harness the Power of the Room, because you and I both know who's the smartest person in the room? The room. When you gather all of these minds together, when you can pull all of this talent together, all of these people that are working and loving kids and serving together, then the power of that collective sharing will only make you better. And so, well, before we jump into Go Community, I want to give you a chance to respond to that, Danny, because you talk to a lot of leaders who share their struggles with you. And so what are some of those common struggles and themes that you hear when you're working with school leaders that might be helpful for other school leaders to identify?
It's everything. So whatever the listener's facing, we talk about it. Like I've heard the craziest things at this point, right? So nothing surprises me anymore. Broadly, we're talking culture, we're talking student achievement, we're talking restorative practices and discipline assessment. We're talking more importantly about leadership, how to lead people, influence, vision. We're talking then very practically for the seat that you sit in, like how do you delegate? How do you prioritize? How do you focus, block out the noise? How do you deal with the politics, And then really what's underneath it all though, the common thread is isolation. Under that, am I good enough? Is this decision smart? Am I smart? How do people like me? Honestly.
Yeah.
And that is just sort of like the human condition. And being able to address that imposter syndrome, the lizard brain, the shadow, whatever you want to call it. But when you have a cohort, right, a personal board of directors on this path with you, and you can name that stuff out loud, it diffuses, the fear doesn't have a grip on you anymore. You can lead with confidence, So that's a part of the magic of that community experience.
And I think so often that what we struggle with as leaders, we forget that everyone else struggles with too. Sometimes we think that we forget that the common struggles that everyone has, that feeling of isolation, that feeling like, well, maybe I'm really not cut out for this, or maybe I'm an imposter. It's not any different than the thoughts that everyone else around you is having. And so just just acknowledging that reality exists, shining a light on the struggle that you're having suddenly leads to the possibility for making a better decision. And so, I think I learned from you, isolation is the enemy of excellence. You taught me that quote, and I know you pulled that quote from someone else who's
Greg Sechicoli.
Yeah, that's right. And so thanks for sharing Greg's quote with us, because I've held on to that ever since you and I have shared that. As leaders consider their need to grow by connecting with others. And that's why I want you to be able to share today with listeners how they can connect with an online community that you put together called Go Community. Because Danny, you are so great at building community. You're so great at pulling people together and giving them platforms for sharing ideas. And so tell Principal Matters listeners about Go Community, because I love promoting your resources, and I would love for them to be able to connect with the other leaders across the nation and across the world who are already participating. And I've jumped into Go Community recently as well. It's a place where I can find resources. It's a place where I can listen to other conversations and where people can share their struggles and get immediate response in a safe place. So talk about that for a little bit, Danny, and how Principal Matters listeners might be able to connect there as well.
Yeah. So I built what I call the greatest place on the internet for educators, right? And my goal was to, again, build another community. And I realized I have the podcast, and there's a community there, a tribe of listeners, and they'll talk, in a vehicle like Twitter or something like that. And then there's the elite community, which is the mastermind, right? But that is, it's intense. It's intense in terms of your authenticity, your vulnerability, the work we do, and I ask people to do so that they level up. And then there's a very real investment too that people have to consider. So I needed something where people wanted to grow, but also, was a bit of an easier community to jump into. I don't know if that makes sense to you. And scale wise as well, right? The mastermind, a cohort is closed at 15 members, right? And those are 15 people that will become what you'll call your second family. And there's a very limited amount of space available. The Go community, I see that is growing to like 1,000, or maybe even more than that. It's one of those places where the more the merrier, and the value increases as more people join. So I wanted to create that space where a whole bunch of school leaders who wanted to connect, share resources to be able to adapt, bring into their schools or whatever, and a place they can play. And like you said, it's safe, right? So it's not like Twitter. Nobody can see what you're posting except our members, right? It's not like Facebook and Twitter. I mean, there's real trolls out there that make you feel small. They can. I remember I was in this principal group in Facebook, and I wanted to ask a question. I forget what it was exactly. It had to do with like, what's getting in the way of you being great this week, right? So to start a discussion, again, to diffuse it, to name it, and maybe to share some strategies. Like if it was a lack of focus, like here's a very practical resource I can give you on that, right? That's why I generously asked that question. So I said, what's getting in the way of you being great this year? And I remember somebody responds, you. And I was like, seriously? Now, that's not the worst thing that's been said to me online, right? Not even close. But I was like, seriously? And maybe they're joking. Maybe they meant it to be mean or adversarial. I don't know. I clicked on the profile, which I shouldn't have done. It was a principal. And I'm like, this is really strange, right?
Yeah.
And I could have started a conversation, but at the end of the day, like, no, because it's not worth the time or the energy and the emotion. So I wanted to create a place too that was attracting the right people.
Mm-hmm.
And by saying there's an annual membership fee to it, it's not for every, that already rules out 90% of people because a lot of people just want free.
Right.
I'm not interested in that, right? Not to make $1 million, but I want some type of, just a bit of a barrier to have some skin in the game to say that my development is worth so much. I need this for me, right? And that'll dissuade so many of the wrong people, which is exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Anyways, so you have this safe place, all the resources. There's courses in there that you can take. There's weekly prompts to get you thinking about how you communicate. You know, if you're a blogger, if you're going to get into the podcasting game, YouTube, people put their creations in there and ask for feedback to make it better. Imagine you're drafting your back to school letter. What a great place to put it in and say, how can this be better, right? Or what's not resonating with you, etc. So unlike Facebook and Twitter, there's no negative folks in there. And if there are, I'm going to kick them out. That's what I love. Like a lot of these places, Twitter, Facebook, like those terrible people, they get to still be in the community. What? Like it's not managed. So that's something that bugs me. There's no self-promotion. It's not going to, like Twitter just go disappear into the ephemeral, it's like, it's very organized. You can search it quite easily and get your hands on the resources you want. Yeah. I mean, I just think it's the greatest place, like I said, on the internet for educators.
Well, let me just go over some of those values, Danny. So Principal Matters listeners, if you're interested in joining the Go community, I'm going to put a link in the show notes where you can connect and find out more. But this is a place where you can access general discussions about things that you care about. So there's general threads of just questions that other principals are having that they're sharing. There's online courses that Danny has developed so you can actually learn if you want to just log in and look for some specific areas of learning where you want to build and grow. There's a world's best virtual book club. There's a constant conversation going on about a specific read at the time. There's weekly prompts so that you have some ideas, some things to practice and think about throughout the week. There's exclusive webinar and sometimes coaching opportunities where you can log in and watch and learn together. Talk about the pitch-free zone for a minute, Danny. What's the value of the Go community having a pitch-free zone?
So in LinkedIn, there used to be some really great educator groups, and then they all turned to garbage. And the reason why is the conversation stopped, the groups got bigger, and really it's just a whole bunch of people saying, here's my blog post, here's my podcast, buy this thing, or whatever. And there's no exchange of value there, right? So there is a very specific area where you can say, hey, I offer this, but that's not just in the flow, the thread of everything. And unlike Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, like there's going to be no advertisements, right? Your data is not going to be sold, right? There's no companies that are investing in this that I report to. This is all for school leaders and making you better. And if you're ever on, like, let's say Facebook or Twitter, and 2-3 hours later, you're looking at, puppy videos, cat videos, or whatever, right? Or you're getting caught up into the political, just craziness that's going on. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you sit on, and you feel yourself like getting frustrated. It doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. This is just a really great place for educators to develop themselves. So that's what it's all about. I forgot to mention too. So by the time this episode probably releases, a new course will be uploaded on authenticity. So if you ever wondered, like, how can I be more authentic in my leadership? That'll be loaded up by August 31st. And all these things, that's not any extra charge. So for a very, very affordable, it's a steal, annual membership rate, you get all that stuff. It's not extra.
I'm so excited, Danny, that you are growing another opportunity. Your masterminds are at a price point where people have to make a really big commitment to be a part of that. But if you want to be a part of the Go community, this is a very generous value, $50 a month or $250 a year, which is, I believe, your price point right now. And so to be a part of a community where you can jump in for conversations with hundreds or thousands of other school leaders and have those really meaningful conversations without having to worry about being trolled, without having to worry about someone trying to pitch to you, without having to worry about being sucked into the other things that happen within the social media sphere. And that's not to say anything disparaging about all the other wonderful social media groups that you and I participate in, because we're both on Twitter and we're both on Instagram and all those areas too. But this is a place to get deeper. It's a place for school leaders to grow.
There's 109 courageous school leaders right now, and it's only going to get better as people, hop in and start playing inside this playground that we've built for you.
Well, Danny, as we get ready to step into the last end of this conversation today, I want to kind of circle back, because as you work with school leaders, most listeners right now, at least in the continental U.S., are getting ready to start school. I always say that because I'll have sometimes my Australian listeners remind me that their school year doesn't start when our school year does.
Yeah, right.
But here in the continental U.S., we have a lot of school leaders that are just stepping right back in. I saw some schools that started yesterday, and then there will be some that start next week, and then some start late August, and some don't start till September. But as you think about the importance of starting a school year, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to school leaders a little bit about some of those ideas that they probably need to keep in mind about launching a school year, building teams, building culture. So talk a little bit about, if you were sitting down for coffee with a school leader who's getting ready to step into their school year and they're overwhelmed with all their schedules and activities and calendars, but you wanted to remind them of what's most important as they step into the school year. What are some of the things that you would tell that man or that woman?
Yeah, so I think I'd tell them that they're most important. They're going to see all the things that need to happen, and that list will be quite long. They're a high achiever, right? That's how they got this principal position. They're going to find a way to figure it out. Like, I'm confident in that for the majority of them, okay? But I guarantee that on that list that they're not going to be on that to-do list. And it's so easy to forget about yourself when you're serving others. And I say, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So what are you going to do to fill your cup, especially in the busyness of a school year launch? And where does that fit in? Where do you fit in? Where does your family fit in? Mm-hmm. One of my, secret tips or I guess most popular things that I do with school leaders is working on an ideal week, right? And I tell people, don't put work on there first, put yourself on there. So you might have a fitness goal, or maybe you have a reading goal, maybe it's a meditation thing, who knows? There might be something spiritual. Put that on the calendar, and then put your family, and then do the rest of the school year. So I'd say do all that. I'm going to tell you some stuff that you might not have considered. I'd tell them to define good enough. They got to that principal position. Like I said, I'm confident the majority of your listeners will be able to figure it out. So they don't like, I can coach them around that. But at the end of the day, it's what do they want to do? How do they want to move forward and have an agency? Mm-hmm. But I would tell them, define what's good enough. What? Yeah, you don't have to have an A quality on everything you do and touch. And sometimes principals can't believe that. School leaders, they're perfectionists. They're such high achievers, keep working and tweaking and, massaging to make it better and better. Not everything has to be that great. There's some things that have to be done with excellence. Mm-hmm. Identify those. And then there's some things that just need to be turned in, So don't waste your time. Put timers on stuff, I coached for a program called the Alt MBA. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but I was a student and now I've coached for 2 cohorts at this point. And part of the coaching responsibility is to provide students with some really great feedback on the work and the projects they create. And you're paid for 10 to 15 hours of work, right? But I was spending 40 hours of work. So I was doing the same thing that I shouldn't be doing, that I coach leaders on. And I realized I just wanted to pack in so much value in the responses I gave students. So I had to define good enough. And I also put a timer that I would read a project and give feedback in 7 minutes. Well, that's it.
Wow.
So I'd hit start, the timer goes down. And by the time the timer goes off, I've read, I've synthesized, and I've provided feedback. And what I've realized is that forces me to hone in on what's that one or two things I need to tell them. I could tell them 10 great things that would help them level up. And guess what? 10 great things is probably overwhelming, but somebody can take action on one or two pieces of advice. So it actually helped me become a better coach as well. So focus on yourself, right? Be intentional with that ideal week and define good enough. That's what I'd tell them.
Wow. Principal Matters listeners, I'm taking notes and I hope you are too, because as you step into your school year, Danny is focusing right at your heart, because you're going to be focused on how to prepare for students. You're going to be focused on how to build your culture and community and your teachers, because you care, because that's the heart of school leaders. But so often the person that we neglect the most in all of that equation is ourselves, is as a leader. And so just to repeat those one more time, don't forget to put you on that list. Don't forget to define what is good enough, because not everything requires sweat and blood to produce. And then put timers on your task. Give yourself space so that you can limit the time and the energy that you're putting into tasks. Well, Principal Matters listeners, I could probably spend the rest of the day talking to Danny Bauer, and I want to just encourage you to check out his resources at Better Leaders, Better Schools, his podcasts, his masterminds, his Go community, and I'll be placing links in the show notes. But Danny, how can listeners stay connected with you? And what are some other, if you have another parting word of advice to wrap up today's episode, I want to give you a chance to let people know how they can stay connected with you, and any other thoughts you had before we close today.
Thanks, Will. And thanks again for having me as a guest. BetterLeadersBetterSchools.com. Check out the podcast, Better Leaders, Better Schools. I have a second one too, School Leadership Series. It's Monday through Friday, 3 minutes about and content, just daily inspiration. Daniel at BetterLeadersBetterSchools.com's email, Alien Earbud on Twitter. And that's an anagram. That's my name, Daniel Bauer. The letters mixed up, so you could get that visual, right? A little alien walking around with some AirPods in his head. So that's how to contact me. And let me end with the story. So I met Eileen in London, and Eileen is an amazing leader in China, Qingzhou, China. And she was doing a teacher fair, recruiting teachers. And so I flew down to meet her. And we had a wonderful lunch. We went to Kensington Gardens. It was a sunny day, so we got to walk around. And we just got to, develop our relationship and talk school, talk education, talk life. And she said something that I'll never forget, which is I had to get over the guilt. And I said, Eileen, what are you talking about? Am I doing something that's no, not you, Danny. I had to get over the guilt of investing in myself. She said, and probably like you will, and I like to look nice when I was a principal, dressed nicely, right? I've seen you at conferences and you look sharp. And Eileen has wonderful professional clothes that an executive, a leader should wear at her caliber. And she said, Danny, I've never thought, given it a second thought, buying nice clothes to be a school leader, right? You want to look the part. But she said, it's crazy because after joining the mastermind, getting over the guilt, how much more important is it that I invest in my mindset? Looking the part is one thing. Actually being the part and being able to do the part is completely different. And so again, how we started, you're totally worth it. So whether it's a Go community, whether it's working with me or Will in a mastermind, or if it's investing in some other type of conference, get connected, school leaders. You're totally worth it. And we're here for you.
Well, Danny Bauer, thank you so much for joining us today as we've discussed Go communities, how to harness the power of the room. And thank you for the amazing work that you do serving school leaders across the nation and across the world. And I mean that with my heart, Danny, not just with my words. I'm so proud of the work that you're doing. And Principal Matters listeners, I want to thank you for the time that you've taken today to listen, to learn, and to grow. Until next time, thanks for doing what matters, and we'll talk to you soon. Hi, friends. If you've listened to the end of today's episode, thank you so much. And I know you enjoyed listening to Danny as much as I did. 2 website links you may want to put into your memory or type into your phone or log into your website, and that is williamdparker.com/mastermind. If you want to be looking at the application and an introduction video for this year's mastermind that I'm offering for select members. 2, you can look at the Go Community website at williamdparker.com/Go Community. Thanks for all that you do. Thanks for being a part of learning and growing together, and I'll talk to you soon.